Hello, and welcome to our podcast. I was witnessing the first podcast with your husband and partner in crime, if we could say this way. It's an incredible story about the nonprofit organization which you started, and I live business. And when I was enjoying the story, how you guys help the businesses, how you take startups from nowhere and bring them to the top of the mountain, that's incredible. So my first question would be, whose idea was to create HumanBULB?
Mine. I'm going to be honest with that.
Okay.
Mine, but he's very, very supportive and has been part of. I've been part of the building startups and tech ecosystems for the past 25 years.
Right.
And a lot of that actually has been, it started off with, I'm an immigrant to the U.S. from Sweden.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And so a lot of I'm a lawyer by training, but was very involved in Silicon Valley in working with technology companies, and especially technology companies coming over from Europe. And so, and I've been on the boards of various chambers of commerce there, the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce, helped form the European American Chambers of Commerce Coalition there, and even did some work for EIT, the public-private partnership for the European Union. And so, and last but not least, was CEO of a tech nonprofit called Silicon Vikings for 5.5 years. That was purpose was to connect Nordic and Baltic innovation with Silicon Valley. And so I did 30 to 40 events per year. That was headquartered in Silicon Valley with, I forgot exactly now, but 15 or so chapters throughout the Nordic and Baltic region.
Right.
And so put together tons of those types of things, and trade conferences and trade missions between the different parts. And so this is something I've been doing for a really long time, and Henry has been tagging along on all of it as my person who's sort of like, you know, we've been a team for a really long time. We actually met in high school, so he's been part of it that way too. And of course he worked in tech and telecom, but the innovation side has been through my work and through what I've been doing.
Right. Well, that's another beautiful story. I think we might invite you for another episode to talk about the relationship in Silicon Valley and in business. You've been in this world of tech innovation, Silicon Valley, for quite a bit of time. In your personal and professional perspective, how did it change? What is it today versus, let's say, 10 years ago?
So I think that the biggest difference really is that originally Silicon Valley was the only place for tech, and that has changed, and I've been very privileged to be part of watching tech ecosystems grow up in all different parts of the world. And so for Sacramento, for example, it's like night and day what it was 10 years ago versus now, and you see the same thing in different European countries. Per capita, Stockholm is second in the number of unicorns produced outside of Silicon Valley, which is sort of an unheard of statistic. And this was a society that originally was, you know, you go to work, that's all you do, you don't do anything like that. And the same has been true. I mean, I've been able to go and speak in Romania and done events in, for example, different Baltic countries, and I mean the transformations and what they're doing in innovation there is just incredible. So it was places where there really was no innovation entrepreneurship. The governments, the cities, everyone's really gotten behind it and they're growing. So there is no longer just one spot for tech startups anymore for innovation to happen. It really is much more distributed.
Right,
and
but
that's the biggest change.
To me, I do a little comparison with Hollywood. The Hollywood was and is the center, and then we have Atlanta, we have Louisiana, we have a few locations in Canada, we have Europe. There are a lot of satellites and a lot of projects are evolving. But back to to the environment. If a business would open up 10 years ago versus today, is it the same path? Do they face the same difficulties, or something changed?
In some ways, it's the same, because it's always still a difficult challenge, and honestly, year by year, funding and things like that are always in flux.
Right.
But I really believe that there are actually a lot more opportunities for startups than there were before, because you have the ability, for example, while yes, it's true that VC funding is still primarily in Silicon Valley, you have the opportunity to be in other regions to help sort of build and keep your costs down, so your runway is longer. You have the ability to do that now versus before you literally had to be there.
Right.
And there's also more of an opportunity to distribute your company in the sense that you can have your engineers in a different location. Than they don't all need to be in Silicon Valley. They can be spread out. Right. And your staff and your accounting and the whole, everybody got used to Zoom, which was a big advancement, I think, in working from home. And there's just sort of more awareness overall about startups throughout the world and the country, U.S. in particular, than just like it used to just be Silicon Valley that was that. And yes, at a certain point, you still need those ties and connections, and you need to be there within accessible reach to Silicon Valley. It's not that it's irrelevant at all. It still is very much important, but it's not that you have to start, stay, and grow there. You have to connect there for sure, right. But you can do it through other channels as well and other locations.
Yeah, well, if you are doing that through other locations, you wouldn't enjoy this beautiful weather and the scenery of California, which is a big benefit to me.
Absolutely.
You, as a lawyer, you've been involved with startups through your career. If there is a startup, if there is let's say, a team of people, and they would like to open up a company, develop their idea, pitch, get funding, possibly develop to the level that they would be ready to go public, which advice would you give them about the form of the company, about all the steps?
Yeah. One in terms of form of company, honestly, everybody talks about all the different LLC, this and that, whatever. If you're talking about funding, you have to have a regular C Corp. Right. That is what the venture capitalists are going to care about. That's what's going to matter. If you're talking about getting funding, and that is your plan, you also need to be incorporated in Delaware, because that's what they're going to have you do ultimately. You don't need to originally, but there'll be a flip at some point in the process if you aren't a Delaware corporation. You can be in California, but a Delaware corporation working here locally. So those are the only sort of, and those things can be adjusted as the company grows. It's just, I think you need the end point or end goal in mind when you start. It saves you a lot of trouble in trying to have to change things as you go forward. But if you if you've already started and you haven't done it that way, there are still ways that you can get sort of prepared for that. But you do want to be look as attractive to investors as you can in the long term, if that's your goal. Right.
So you advise your startups to incorporate in Delaware versus California. Why?
Because that's what the VCs want. Delaware has a wide, long history of corporate law that goes way back. But when they acquire you, they're going to transfer your company to Delaware versus California. You would file. So if you do that at the beginning, it's just an additional sort of administrative burden, but you can file your corporation in Delaware, and then you file in California as a foreign corporation doing business in California. So you'd still have to file here, but your home base would be Delaware. And the main reason is just, even though it's state law there too, corporate law is state law, they want to, it's the place in the country that's almost considered, national law, so to speak, because of the sense that, that's where the big corporations incorporate. That's where the VCs want to see what's happening. They want predictability in what they want. They want to know what the rules are. They want to have everything sort of uniform, and that's why.
I understand that it's like a condition. What about other states with quite good environment for companies, such as Wyoming or Nevada? Are they on the map or not at the moment?
It depends on what you're talking about. Like, there are a lot of states where you can build and grow a business there locally. It depends on if you're trying to build what we would call a lifestyle business, where you're really just trying to build a company that's successful and you're sort of going to go on and provide for you, your family, and employees, or if you're looking for sort of that 10x growth and you're trying to hit the venture capital market. If you're in the venture capital market, you can operate in any state, so it doesn't really matter in that sense from that perspective, but you'd want to be incorporated in Delaware and then have your sort of do your local filing in the state that you're operating in.
California and Delaware, from my knowledge, they have different tax regulations and tax base. California is way more expensive. How does incorporation in Delaware, but then registration in California as a foreign company, impact? So
wherever you are, it doesn't actually matter where you're incorporated in that sense. There are just extra sort of regulatory requirements or steps. You have to do certain filings per year. But wherever you're located is where your tax base is going to be. So that's why if you're incorporated in Delaware, you still have to file in California as a foreign entity doing business in California, and so you're still subject to California taxes. If you incorporate in any other state, that's the same thing, but you're doing business here, you're still talking about California taxes.
If a company plans to go public, what is the best way for them to organize the company to be share-based, not necessarily percentage-based?
So that is not most of my work that I've done, so I don't really want to, I know, but I don't want to specifically want to comment on it because it isn't my area of expertise. I've been working with smaller mid-sized companies, and they usually get either acquired. The goal is for any startup, they're either acquired by a big company or they sort of grow themselves into that point, and by that point they're hiring huge firms to take them to go public. So yeah.
But is there like basic work which they could do to avoid any, additional work in future, like you mentioned with Delaware?
At the point where they're at that stage, there will be a lot of sort of iterations before they get to then and the changes and what they're doing with their CPAs and attorneys at that point. So there isn't one specific answer to it.
Right. And if we try to answer this question, who is the best person you would recommend to address this question? We want to open a share-based company, not a percentage-based company, corporation.
It would be attorneys who specialize in IPOs.
You also mentioned during one of our meetings that you specialize on working with grants. How is the situation right now with the grants, with the work with the government? Does the government have any preferences for their grants right now?
So I don't know necessarily that I specialize in grants. I have been able to successfully obtain grants for nonprofit.
That's what we call specialized.
Oh, okay.
You got the money.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't really done that as an attorney. Have done that as the nonprofit founder. But it really is, there are a lot of grant opportunities available in different areas, and you have to look at both federal, state, city, county, private as well. There are a lot of programs and softwares that you can get that are actually very inexpensive, where they can sort of help match you with the right grants based on criteria, or you can just search. Google is amazing for everything. But the real key there is finding the grants that match whatever criteria that you are looking for, that you have, that match your programs. So if you read something and you're kind of a long shot for it, that's not your grant. You just have to keep searching. So I think the hardest part about grants is actually really digging in and doing the research and to find the right matches for you. But it's all different types of topics and that are available. And then it's really doing the background work and spending a lot of time on the grant applications. It is like putting together a massive case filing. It is, you have to read exactly what their requirements are and make sure you hit every single one, because that's how they're rating you. You have to make sure that everything that needs to be on that document and that paper is in there. So it's about being really thorough in what you're doing. And making sure that you've met all of their deliverables, you're very detailed in your timelines, you've explained how you're going to check and monitor the progress, and the outcomes are specific deliverables that they want to see.
Right.
And that you're telling, it's storytelling. It's telling your story in a way that makes it very attractive to them. And read their mission. It's like anything that you're doing. Read their mission, see what this particular organization or funder is looking for, what stories they like, do some background research and see what they've funded before, so that you can, I mean, that tells you a lot, sort of what types of projects they funded, and see sort of if you fit in that niche, and then sort of tweak or mark what you're doing according to those objectives.
Right. How do you work with your startups? Do you help them to file for whatever they're trying to file, or they have to find their own legal advisors? What is the model of your organization? Of
HumanBULB. So we don't do the legal work. We help them, basically, we take the companies from the point where they have an idea, or they almost have an idea, or they kind of know that, oh, I want to do something in this particular area, and then we take them through a 10-week process where we are showing them first the ideas, getting all the ideas out, how the best practices for ideation, and then we give them sort of a full concept or understanding of, here are what other startups are doing in this space. Because sometimes you think you have a brilliant idea, and 100 other companies are doing exactly the same thing. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. It's just you need to know who the other companies are, and you need to kind of go through that. And it fine-tunes your idea. And then we go through our building our ideal customer profiles to see who is your target customer. Then we help the startups actually go out and talk to potential customers, so that they get the feedback on, oh yeah, this is a great idea, or now we would never use this. Because that's something you need to know before you actually invest in your time and any money in it. And then once we have that, we help them with sort of creating or defining their minimum viable product. Then they go back and do more customer interviews and more validation with the, here's what our product would be, does this meet your requirements? And they say, yeah, this is great, this isn't. So then they iterate again. It's about sort of continuously making improvements until they have a validated product. And then we help them put together their pitch decks, do the best practices for that. We teach them all the things about startup financing. And then by the time they leave their program, we are helping to either plug them into another program if they need more help, or we're plugging them into resources about where they need to sort of like, here's a good opportunity for a next step, or they're ready to go incorporate and sort of really be started.
Right. What is the correct way to approach your organization and join the company, join the program?
So it's reaching out to me or Henry, and just our website, humanbulb.org, right. Is the right place to go for that, and just connect. And we are doing a bunch of pre-accelerator boot camps, is what we're calling them, to really reach out and sort of get into the community more and find entrepreneurs in areas that wouldn't necessarily just be coming to us, and we're focusing on women for one thing. There aren't enough female entrepreneurs out there, and then people of color. And the whole idea with that is we're going into the communities and the groups that they're already at, teaching some basic pre-skills, sort of, so that they are ready to move into and apply for the Innovation Accelerator program.
A question which would be definitely interesting to our viewers, what is the fee for your services?
Zero. So we're a nonprofit organization.
Right.
We're funded by grants and sponsorships. If anyone's a company out there, please sponsor and support what we're doing. That'd be amazing. But the fee to founders and startups is zero. The whole point for us is really to spur innovation and entrepreneurship in this area. It's the way to really increase economic growth in Sacramento and make this a hub for innovation. Well,
it definitely is. It's way less costly to develop a business here comparing to Palo Alto. If we compare your organization with a business incubator, mm-hmm. What are the traits that you have of an incubator, and what are the traits which are unique comparing to an incubator?
So, incubators are all at sort of different phases, and some of them are, you can stay there for a year or 2 years, and it's really office space is one portion of that. I think that's really the only sort of really biggest difference is availability of office space, so we don't provide that. But in today's market, we're still doing the mentorship, we're still doing the full sort of program and connections that they would get in an incubator program. And we would still be sort of using our resources and connections to connect them to wherever they need to be. So that is really the biggest difference, is really space, and that it's a more concentrated time. Officially our program is 10 weeks, but our goal is that these companies will really be big and succeed, and so we will be following up sort of past that 10 weeks. So in that sense, it really does kind of keep going, but the formal programming is 10 weeks.
I also learned from the previous podcast episode that you are hosting and holding a lot of events, including a World Cup. Could you please share with our viewers about these events?
Yeah, absolutely. So Startup World Cup is a global competition that started in 2017. I started doing regional competitions for Startup World Cup in 2018, so just a year after they had started. And I've run them in Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and the Baltic region. Held competitions there in Latvia for the Baltic region. I've done them in Utah and Texas. We've done Dallas. This year we are doing Austin, and as well as Sacramento and the whole Southern California region.
Oh, wow.
So covering everything from LA down to San Diego. And what makes these competitions great is the regional competition winners. There's 10 in each region who are chosen as the finalists for the region. They compete live. Shark Tank is what everyone thinks of. So I'll just say Shark Tank style with a panel of judges, and the judges then select, they pitch for 2 minutes. There's 4-minute follow-up questions from the judges, or that's when they're in the hot seat to answer anything that was sort of missing from their presentations. And then the final scoring happens that same day, so we find out who wins. And then the regional winners then go on to compete in the global grand finale against 70 other regional winners from around the world, which is a super cool competition that has had speakers. Speaking of Shark Tank, it's been both, what's his name, Dennis O'Leary, Barbara Cochran, our speakers that have been speakers, one this year and one last year. And we've had Steve Wozniak, or the Woz from Apple. And everything, CEOs or co-founders from LinkedIn, Oracle, Netflix, Kayak, you name it. There's a super long list of, so it's a really high-grade event. And you compete there for $1 million investment prize. And we've had, from the regional competitions I've won every year, I get a couple of our teams end up in the top 10, which is pretty cool. Still waiting for the #1 shot, so I need everyone to apply so we can make sure that we find the very best one that wins. We have the Sacramento one last year was the first time we did it in Sacramento, and that was a company called JAPA, Just a Parking App was the acronym. And he made it to the top 10. We had one called Lazarus 3D from our Texas regional, which was surgical tools on this fake material that seemed very real, which was a very, very innovative concept. So there's no, it's sort of industry agnostic. You can be from any different industry in your startup. So we're just looking for the best, coolest new ideas that have real market potential. So it's a very exciting competition and something that's really great for all the regions.
When is it happening? Where? And can we get tickets to attend, or what is the condition? Yeah,
so it's free to attend. Would love to have everyone attend. The Sacramento one is taking place on November 16th, Thursday night, 5:30 to 7:30 in North Natomas. You can look at HumanBULB.org for all the specifics and register there. We need you to register, but it's free. And the LA competition, sorry, I just mixed that up. The LA competition is November 16th. The Sacramento one is November 9th. And the application deadlines for both to apply as a startup is October 30th.
Right, so we still have some time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time, for answering all the questions today. I'm sure that we'll continue our discussions and we'll have more questions to follow up. The last thing, your 3 best advice for a startup company.
Building your network is key. That is the first and foremost thing. A lot of startup founders are sort of so busy doing the work that they don't actually get out there and make the connections that they need. So that needs to be thought of as a business priority. The second thing is really have your customer clearly in mind, and don't assume anything. Go out and talk to them. Go out and talk to as many potential customers as possible. Get as much data as you can, and be willing to adjust what you're doing and pivot. Third piece of advice is keep learning. Keep learning about everything. And most importantly with that, I think the idea for a lot of people and why a lot of people don't actually start their startups too, so it's a flip side, is that they feel like, oh, I don't know everything yet. And there's this concept called just-in-time learning, which means you don't have to know what you need to know 9 months from now right now. Start. Get started right away, just churn it out, figure it out, keep learning all the way through, because there is no way to know everything that you need from day one until the end line ahead of time. There just isn't, because the world changes, the situations change, so just make sure you keep learning all the way through, make that part of your process.
Well, ma'am, thank you so much for coming, and you guys make sure to not waste your time, just do it.
Yes.
And stay tuned.